Welcome to Drinks Coach. A little different today. Just as we start, as I always start, lowercase Drinks Coach UK, lowercase Vinesack. Talk to me, ask me any questions you like on social media. That's Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook, just look for Joe Wadsack. There aren't many of us. Also, you'll be watching YouTube right now. So look at comments below, hit the bell if you want to subscribe and you want to get updates and notifications of new shows. Remember, all these shows are designed as a library, so you can go back. Hopefully some people are still watching the shows I did at the beginning of last year. One of the reasons why I decided to do this channel really is so I didn't have to explain myself over and over again. When I get an email saying, so what's the best sherry I should drink, or what are the wines in Greece like, I can refer them to shows. See what I'm doing. Today's going to be a bit different. And a lot of people keep on asking me, how do you stay in touch with what's going on during lockdown? I mean, how can you possibly know these wines are the best or not the best? Aren't you just being sent wine and just recommending the wines that you get? Well, there's a very small part of that. It depends. If I get a wine that fits into a set of other wines sent in just by happenstance that fits the theme, then I might use it. But you'll find that I'm genuinely less enthusiastic about those wines to camera. I'm trying to be as honest as I can about the quality. And this channel is designed to train, to educate, to inform, and to entertain. But also, it's no use if I'm peddling bad wine, is it? So it's important that you know how we do this. Well, this is a case in point. Last week would have been the Wines of Spain event, one of the largest generic wine tastings in London. It used to happen down at the old Billingsgate Market. Giant tasting full of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, literally, all piling in over a period of possibly a couple of days and going around stall after stall, hundreds if not thousands of wines available to taste. And you go through regionally, and you mark down the wines you want to see and you go and taste them. This year they've done something rather innovative, and in these cardboard boxes, which are almost small enough to post through a letterbox, they sent wines from a virtual catalogue so that we could taste these wines at home. And this is how it's done. So we don't get bottles of everything, not all the time. But what I've done here is unpacked the 12 samples I'm allowed for my ticket with Wines of Spain this year. I've picked particular subjects. Wines that interest me. I'm sorry if I've missed out on certain subjects or certain samples weren't available that I wanted to necessarily taste. But here we've got kind of little tiny sections. And there's 12 wines here. As you can see, I haven't opened them yet. So this is going to be kind of a swan dive through Spain, explaining myself as I go along and seeing whether I like these wines or not. And I've tried to pick wines that I think are going to be good. And then new vintages of wines that I'm already familiar with, for example. So let's see how we get on. Right, let's start off with the first wine. How are we going to do this? Well, obviously, if I just hold these up and point them to you, it doesn't tell you very much. Look, here it says it, for example. Martin Kodash, Rias Baixas, Albrinho 2020. So what I've done, with the beautiful help of my wonderful assistant, Emma Russell, is actually printed out the text sheet so you can see what the wines actually look like. So Martin Kodak's Albrinho, about 16 quid touch. Wine available, I believe, because I walked past it the other day, in Majestic. Okay, so that's our first wine. Where is it? Also helpful, my wife is an illustrator. Yeah, there we go. Just above where Portugal is. You see that area which is Vinha Verde in Portugal? You get to the boundary of Portugal. If you just go north of that, this area here is called Rias Baixas. Santiago de Compostela is there, La Coruña is up there, but we're in the top northwest of Spain, above Portugal. And the wines that are made here that are super premium, made from a great variety, Albrinho often, and the Albrinho is king here in Rias Baixas. So there you go. Right. In fact, here's a map which actually shows the appellation. Rias Baixas. Can we see that? Yes. Anyway, okay, so glass, bottle. Ooh, big pour. Don't want to get too piddled. Right, so first wine, 2020, warm year. This wine's obviously very, very fresh indeed. Albrinho is a great variety, which is usually bottled unoaked, almost always. But it also likes can take a bit of a punishing. It's a very sophisticated variety. It's very noble in that sense. So if you put the wine into a tank and you ferment it, and then the dead yeast cells drop to the bottom of the tank, like grand varieties like Chardonnay, for example, those flavours can reintroduce themselves and textures can reintroduce themselves into the wine. So you end up with a wine which doesn't just smell nice and taste nice, but feels creamy and saline and wonderful in the mouth. And a lot of these vineyards are actually very close to the sea indeed, and they just scream seafood. Plate of calamari, oh yeah baby, it's just the perfect drink for that sort of thing. Okay, so Gesundheit. Young, still a hint of the bubble gum about it, which will disappear I think over the next few months. Tastes like it's really only just been bottled. I would say that's latently very good at the moment. I would probably still be happy drinking the 2019, which I think was a very, very good vintage. So if you go into the store and it's not 2020 yet, please do not worry. I think they're right to hold onto this for a bit longer. But if it is 2020, flipping delicious, just hold on to it for a couple of months. Fantastic. Wine 1. Okay, this is how it's going to go. We've only got 12 to do. Don't know how long the show's going to be. We're 6 minutes in. What's this? This is a wine we've done on the show before, but it's a new one. New vintage. This is the magnificent González Bias Tia Pepe and Rama 2021. So this is a Fino sherry made by the king of Fino sherry. Basically, it's Tia Pepe. And every year they release a small amount of basically unfiltered, unstabilised, texturally gorgeous and rich wine. This is the current label. How does that look? If I had a bottle of that in the fridge, I'd drink it. Tia Pepe, Fina and Rama. Absolute banger. Again, a laughable price. Tia Pepe and Rama, it's 15 quid. Maybe a bit more, 15, 16 pounds. But I mean, Tia Pepe is like a tenner, and I always said that it's very hard to think of any wine in the world that offers that much flavour and explosion and flavour versatility and gastronomic options for that price anywhere else in the world. Well, this is just pimp my Tia Pepe, right? This is Tia Pepe with UV lights, woofers and tweeters, big fat wheels, Triple K turbocharger, Momo steering wheel in it. Right, so there you go. What does it taste like? Oh god, it's so fresh. It's like it was like sniffing freshly cut hay. It was almost like I just had a bale of straw in my mouth. But there's a fruitiness and a saltiness and a mouth-watering umami about it. It smells a little bit like lava bread in Wales, which is kind of an umami thing as well. We're down here in the bottom of Spain, in the Andalusia, not a million miles away from Gibraltar, actually. Looking very much forward to my next visit. It's one of the most beautiful and places with the most amazing food in the world. Okay, so this is a bone-dry, hair on the back of your neck, explosion of smells. It's got the texture and richness of like Batar Montrachet, like a 200-pound but white Burgundy. The texture's fantastic. And then in it, you've got these lovely little flavours. And if you think for 15 quid, this is genuinely offering you the same level of satisfaction of a super premium white Burgundy. And I'll go to the stake. I'll be burnt like Joan of Arc saying that. I think it's very, very hard in a lineup to say one was better than the other. There you go. So they're the two white wines that I called in. Now, a tiny miniature flight of two wines. These wines are my latest fetish, which is the wines of kind of near Valencia, I suppose, going inland. Here's a very simplified map of Spain. Okay, the big big red splodge, like the Jupiter red spot. If you go here, you're in Valencia, okay? If you come inland, you come to the Meseta, which is the big plateau of Castilla-La Mancha, just south of Madrid. La Mancha is where Cervantes' famous book, Don Quixote, with the madman who was tilting at windmills because he thought they were big horses. That's where that's set, the comedy of Cervantes. Call it a comedy. It's a bit hard going, even the English translation. I suggest you go and see the ballet. It's my favourite ballet in the world ever. Okay, it's brilliant. Okay, so around here there's all sorts of vineyards and so forth, and there's a variety there that's been much maligned for many years and is now getting the credit it deserves, which is it does have a degree, it is a bit of a rough diamond, and I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but I'm rather hoping that one, if not both of these, are very good examples of it. It's a great variety called Bobal, Bobal. Okay, which one we're going to start with? We'll start with the Alto Landon Mil Historias Bobal, 2019. So it sounds like it's going to be quite ripe. 2019, if I remember, was a very warm year. Label looks really cool. There we go. Fantastic. And that's 100% Bobal, with the lady bed on the front. 1,000 stories, Mil Historias. Why do I like it so much? Well, Bobal is cheap, and if you go to Valencia, you go into a tapas bar, or you go into a banco or something like that, tabanco, sit down, have a glass of wine and a plate of food, you can have a really good, I mean, like, at least national, world-class quality glass of red wine for like €2. You can buy a bottle of decent Bobal in Spain for considerably less than €5. And there are some people out there that realise that maybe they've forgotten the very, very old vines, which I'll come on to in a minute, and have realised that with proper treatment and with very, very old fruit, or fruit from very, very old plants, you get insane concentration and complexity. And these wines could potentially, going forward, and are beginning to challenge the great wines of Rioja, Ribera Del Duero, etc. So this is the first one we're going to hit, which is $12.99 a bottle in the UK. Post-Brexit, with the exchange rate in the toilet as it is, $12.99 isn't a lot of money these days. Okay, beautiful colour. Beautiful, inky, fresh colour. It smells very much like the really good wines from Occitanie, that is the midi area of France. If you like wines like Fougère, wines like Pic Saint-Loup, it has this wonderful, lustrous, inky smell, which smells of dark, black cherry liqueur, maybe. There's a bit of a bake to it, but there's a lovely perfume over the top. Black cherries is definitely what Bobal reminds me of quite a lot of the time. I don't think there's any oak in there, not at this price. But I mean, so much flavour. Okay, it's you know, on a scale of 1 to 100 quid, let's say, in wine, the wine's a little bit lacking in mid-palate richness. It's probably made from slightly younger vines, I don't know, but it's pretty good. And I can't think of anything which is more interesting to drink around the £10 mark in Europe than that at the moment. It's as good as anything else. But spicy, savoury, if you like southern French reds and you want something to have with your charcuterie or a big stew, this is definitely on the list. Okay, so the next wine is called Cien y Pico, which means 100 and a little bit. It's kind of like a bit of dog Spanish, really. It just means 100 and something. Envasa Manchuela Bobal. So this is from Manchuela, which is one of the regions near there, between Valencia and that big plateau, in an area called Utiel Requena. And Manchuela, Envasa, I suppose, means in glass, which might mean unoaked. I'm not sure. But Cien y Pico, I didn't know this until I actually read out the blurb about it, because I've been drinking this for a couple of years and loving it. It's 14% alcohol, plenty of guts to it. Cool label. I've seen it in a lot of bistros up and down London's Soho high streets and so forth. This wine's an extra £1. It's like $13.99 retail, which means you could probably buy it on a list in a restaurant comfortably under 30 quid with a bit of luck. Quite delicious, this wine. It's been aged in barrels for 6 months, so it's got a bit of the filler that this didn't have, which is probably where the extra quid went. It's a project with a friend of mine, one of my dearest friends, and one of the people that a lot of people say we have a lot of similarities, because he's Australian and lives in Australia, but he's kind of like an English guy, and I'm a bit like an English-Australian guy living over in England. A guy called Alexander Brooks, and his lovely wife, Elena Golikova, if you can see there. Both very, very talented wine people. Czar Brooks is one of the best wine judges I've ever met. We have a lot of friends in common. And Elena is a fantastic winemaker too. And they found these vineyards which were going to be grubbed up because people thought, oh, they're just not producing enough grapes. And they said, but these vines are 100 and something years old. That's where the name comes from, Tiene Pico. Stop. Tell the bulldozers to go away. Like the beginning of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you've got Xar Brooks and his wife, a Spanish winemaker, a female lady called... Oh, it's a male guy, Luis Garcia, and an Italian, Nicola Tucci. And they've made this wine and basically saved this Bobal for those that care. Much darker in colour. So look at the colour difference. My word. This is like ink. It's almost like blood. Gosh, wipe all that off there. Okay, so. Again, just to remind you, Tiene Pico Manchuela. I think I love that label. Very good. Well done, Czar, etc. Oh, wow. More of the roast of the hot climate. It smells of freshly baked cherry clafouti. If you know what that is, it's like a big, like a sweet Yorkshire pudding full of cherries and fruit and custard. It's quite delicious. Wow. The oak's a little prominent at the moment, but I imagine it's only just been bottled. Yes, please. I would stick that straight on my wine list. Bravo. I'm trying to put this back on, never mind. Okay. So, that's Bobal. We had a couple of Bobals there for you to look at. Tiene Pico and Mil Historias. So that's our first little pairing. Moving on, how are we doing for time? Not too bad, 60 minutes. I better move on a bit faster. Got lots of wines with lots of stories to tell. This is Ecula Monastrell. Ecula Monastrell, another really sexy label, if I'm honest. This is from the region of Yekla, again, in the area of, around that area, I think maybe mildly south of where the last wine came from. And Ecula, I suppose that's the old Spanish spelling, Yecula, whatever. It's from Yekla. Beautiful label. That looks like some kind of Roman Etruscan tessellation or something, some kind of, mosaic. And this wine was a mere £11, if I'm right. Let's have a look. Can't say fairer than that, can you? No, 11 quid. So, Monastrell. What is Monastrell? Well, Monastrell is a great variety which a lot of people adore, not least me. And it's a great variety called Mourvedre in France, or Mataro in Australia. Mataro, or I think they call it Mataro in California as well. But Mataro is now properly called Mourvedre. And sometimes you see wines called SGMs, which are Rhone blends, because typically the three great varieties you find in the Southern Rhone blend are Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvedre. So here we are. This is a Mataro from Ethbane. What do we expect from that? Well, Monastrell, they famously say Monastrell is no good unless it can see the sea, unless the vines can see the sea. And this is true of the wines from the Roussillon and the south of France again, and Châteauneuf-du-Pape, etc. Beautiful dark colour. I love it because when it's ripe enough, and of course in Spain it's got a better chance of ripening than if it was in France. That's a wonderful, fudgy, chocolatey undertone. And that fudginess works really well with other varieties. Carignan, which is like figgy, and a like 5% Monastrell, makes it just like, I don't know, like a fig tart. And it just makes you drool, makes your mouth water. What do we think of this? Again, from the very warm vintage of 2019. Unbelievably nice to drink and easy to drink. I think we're just moving into a phase where perhaps it's not a summer wine. I think that wine is a wine that'd be great when it gets cold again and the leaves start falling off the trees and everything goes orange again. It's got a toffee fudgish edge which will go really well with things like a toad in a hole or a slow cooked braised beef cheek or something like that. For now, maybe a barbecued rib of beef, I would say, something like that. But it's not a wine that really takes to chilling very well because it's got some oak and it's quite big textured. But also the wine tastes very, very young and very fresh. So as I'm in the trade and I'm tasting these wines in a trade setting, I'll be looking at going, I'm going to buy that for Waitrose if I'm a Waitrose buyer. The wine probably wouldn't get here until probably July, August. And by the time it's actually out on the shelf, the appropriate time to drink this would have come round again. So yes, delicious wine, but not for summer. There we go. Okay, now we've now got a range of 3 wines, which I'd like to. Don't know where to put this. 3 wines, which all got something in common, and this is something which intrigues me. By the way, this is I think probably the most widely planted grape variety still, even in Spain. Most people probably think it's Tempranillo, but I've got a hunch it's probably Garnacha, which is this grape variety. More importantly, Garnacha is still the most widely planted grape variety on earth, and can take many forms. Grenache Noir in the south of France can be quite simple, very one-dimensional, but full of fruit, alcohol, lots of raspberry freshness, very robust. Creates the basis from which things like Côte du Rhône are made, where they season it with the more complex varieties like Syrah. Sorry about the noise outside. I do apologise if you can hear that. But we've got 3 Garnachas here from Spain. It's also Canonal in Sardinia. But Garnacha, yeah, one of the world's most important varieties, but not always considered the most noble. Châteauneuf de Pape is made vastly from this, so it's capable of greatness when treated properly. So what we've got here, we've got 3 different Garnachas from across Spain. This one is from Borsal, which is a cooperative in a place called Somontano. Bodegas Borsal, Cabriola. This is only 70% Garnacha, actually. It's got a bit of something else in it as well. A bit of Syrah, a bit of Mazuelo. Mazuelo is Carignan, I think. Beautiful label. If there's one cooperative or one company that has benefited from the discovery of the wines of the northeast of Spain more, I would like to know what it is. But Borsal, I remember buying wine when I was at Waitrose. I made an own label wine, actually bought some wine in, and it was delicious. And we struggled to sell it for a little while because people just didn't know where it was from. But we were selling wine, Garnacha, old vine Garnacha, 100-year-old vine Garnacha from this particular producer, Borsal, for $2.99. Yeah, $2.99 a bottle, and it was my everyday go-to wine. I made everything out of it. I made mulled wine out of it. I made stuff a Spanish drink on holiday out of it. What do you call it? Can't remember right now. Sangria, that's it. And also the drink that a lot of Spanish people drink, particularly the Basques drink a drink called calimocho, which is a mixture between Coca-Cola and red wine with a slice of orange in it. In fact, that was Picasso's favourite drink, believe. So you could do that with that wine. But this wine now, and this is not the cheapest wine they make, but this is £17.50 from Borsal. They didn't make anything over a fiver when I knew them. So it's very, very exciting what they've done. But the cooperative started only in 1958, 1960, something like that. And they're now producing some of the most well-known Garnacha in the world. And as you can see from these wines, Garnacha isn't always the darkest wine, particularly that one. Because the grapes are big, thin-skinned. So when you press them, a lot of alcohol, a lot of pulp, a lot of sugar inside, but not much colour in the skin. So this is the proof that big, ballsy, heavyweight, second-row, prop-forward wines don't have to have colour. The colour's only from the skin, so the smaller the grape, the darker the wine is, and that's the only mechanism. It doesn't have anything to do with the amount of sugar that's in the wine. So this wine's 15.5% alcohol. Nice little tipple to keep me going. I wonder if I'll make it to the end. If I put that in a lineup of wines, I didn't know what country they were from. With the addition of the Syrah and the Carignan, so basically what here we've got, Grenache, Syrah, Carignan, I would 100% have thought that came from either Côte du Rhône Village or somewhere like Corbière or Minervois. It's an extraordinary dead ringer for a premium Côte du Rhône Village. Wow, lots of flavour. Very, very serious wine, and for £17.50, quite an interesting little proposition if you want to try it. Just to remind you again what the label looked like. It's the one with the man on the horse. Okay, Cabriola. Okay, now, the middle one is a wine which I was introduced to by a very nice lady who had a wine bar not 10 minutes walk from here, called Artisan and Vine, but sadly they didn't make it through a recession a while back. But this wine is called Nava Herreras. This wine is from a DO, which I think is DO Madrid. So it comes from just north of Madrid. So we're coming to quite a cool area, very high altitude, cool area. It looks like there's a bloke on a bear. Yeah, bloke on a bear, Nava Herreras. Label's really lovely. The bottle's really heavy and substantial. You can feel that the wine's going to be quite expensive. And we are looking at 22 quid for a straight Garnacha. And this wine is made from the fruit from lots of different vineyards that have been protected by the group that got together to produce this company, which is called Bernabeleva. And Bodegas Bernabeleva have one wine which is made in a cave, in a fuda, in a winemaking vessel, which is hewn out of pure stone. And because it's actually a part of the mountain itself, it keeps very cold. So when you put the wine in and ferment it, and it gets hot, the whole mountain absorbs the heat out of it. It's almost like the first ever temperature control. And although they haven't been making this wine for very long there, I think it's in the 70s, I don't think it says here. But the wines from this particular producer are blisteringly pretty and perfumed and floral, and I absolutely adore them. And they're also very natural, because they're natural, naturally fermented using spontaneous, allowing the wine to ferment on its own. There's a texture and a fluffiness which makes these wines indescribably pretty, and they're more than a match for anything that Chateauneuf du Pape produces. So here we are, Nava Herreras. Look how pale that wine is. Nava Herreras, 2018, should be a smashing vintage. That was a very good year. Oh, wow. Oh, well. That deserves a bigger glass, I think. Let's try that. Sweet fruit, almost sweet and sour, rose hip. Raspberries, a bit of herby, kind of almost a taste of a leaf in there. Very, very lovely, very delicate, a wonderful food wine, I have to say. So, 3 different Garnachus. One from Borsao, Somontano. Oh, I should tell you where that is, shouldn't I, really? It's in the foothills of the Montans. So here are the Penedès. The Pyrenees Benedict. Penedès is a region down here. And in the foothills of the mountains of the Pyrenees, you will find this region. Somontana means at the foot of the mountain, if you speak Castilian, so not as much of a surprise there. What happens is it means have very, very warm days, but the cold air coming down the mountains at night chills the vineyard, so you get much, much fresher fruit. But this wine has wonderful extraction and lots of colour because of that change in temperature. This one more maritime, I suppose. Well, maritime's the wrong word. No, high altitude, cooler, more fragrant. We can bring us on to the last one. Now, a lot of people don't realise this, but there's lots of very, very good Garnacha in Spain's most famous red wine region, which is La Rioja. There we go. La Rioja's here. Double the size around it and much older is Navarra. But if you can see that, there we go. There's Navarra. And there's La Rioja. Mostly planted with Tempranillo. There's some other unusual varieties, Mazuelo, Graciano. But there's a lot of this, particularly in Rioja Baja, down the sort of like softer lands. But this is from, I think, Rioja Alavesa. It's from one of the greatest producers of Rioja known to man, called CUNE, or Compañía Vinícola Norte de España. So it's CVNE, but it looks like CUNE. And this particular estate, which they own, is called Contino. Look at the pretty colour. Whenever I see Contino Garnacha, it has this vibrant, vibrant purple colour. Oh, gosh, yeah. It's got the muscularity of that and the fragrance of that. At the moment, it's still incredibly unevolved. That wine, that wine needs more time. I'd buy that and I'd bank it, or I'd put it in a Christmas assortment maybe at the end of the year. Tastes like it's just been bottled. So what are we looking at? Well, the first one I think I told you was £17.50. This is about 22 quid. And the Contino Garnacha, this one, is £26.80. So we're not pissing around anymore. Expensive. Right, going to the last 4 wines. Nearly half an hour up. Doing 2 doubles. We're going to show you. This is royalty, okay, and this is very exciting for me. Even though I'm looking at little bottles that look like somebody urinated in them. This is a treat. Okay, so the first 2 wines I'm going to show you are Ribera Del Duero. So there was always a story that the best red wines in Spain came from La Rioja, except for Vega Sicilia, which came from... there we are. Ribera Del Duero. Okay, so all the best wines came from here, except for the one that came from here, Vega Sicilia. Now there are other producers there: Tinta Pesquera, Condado de Hadra. There are famous ones as well. Viña Pedrosa. I'm just rattling off wines in a panicky way, but the wines from here are made from the same grape variety, essentially, as the wines from here. The wines from here are made from a grape variety called Tempranillo, which is known down here as Tinto Fino, or fine red. That's it, full stop. They don't add anything else to it. And the wines have, because of wind, altitude, slightly rougher exposition, a tougher environment, produce much thicker skins. The wines are tougher, more tannic, more intense. The wines are virtually impossible to drink when they're first bottled, but they turn to something quite sublime if they're done right. 15 years ago, you'd buy 10, and 8 of them could be complete shit. I mean, just smell of horse's backside and all sorts of winemaking faults. That's just not the case anymore. And although Rioja continues to be exceptional value for money if you buy good Rioja, if you're paying premium price Rioja, £20, you buy something Rioja, £20 plus, you are still getting some of the world's best red wines. Ribera del Duero, because there are relatively few vineyards of real great standing, the wines tend to be a bit more expensive. But what we're looking at here is I'm going to pour in this glass a wine called Ligaris, which is owned by the great Carver House of Codorniu, which I'll come on to in a minute. And I believe is still made by a genius Australian winemaker called Arthur. Might be Arthur Miller, even, which sounds a bit of a cliche, but I think his name's Arthur, certainly. And he used to be one of the wine people responsible for making Grange in Australia, one of the world's most famous wines, and the current release, 580 quid a bottle. So this wine's extraordinary, and bringing back the fortunes of an estate which have long been forgotten. And then the other one is a wine which is also quite well known, but these guys have been making wine exceptionally well since before I was born. This is Dominio Fournier. So what we've got is we're going to do two Ribera del Dueros, both, I believe, 100% Tempranillo, Tinta del País, which is the same as Tempranillo, and we're going to sit them side by side. And I'm going to think that this wine, the first wine, I think with slightly less prestige and less reputation, will be mildly cheaper. And I think that's right. I think it is. It's 25 quid. This one, Dominion Fournier, is 27 quid. So they're basically the same price. What's the difference? I honestly don't know yet. But also, we've got two wines from the otherworldly vintage. One of the greatest vintages in my lifetime, certainly. I think some people have discussed it, in hushed tones to me, as the greatest vintage of anybody's lifetime. 2016 is a vintage that made extraordinary wines all the way along the Douro Valley. Ribera del Duero means on the Duero River. River del Duero, right? And if you go all the way along here, it gets the Portuguese boundary, and then becomes the Douro. So the Douro and the Duero are the same, one and the same thing, and all the way along there, there's some really quite special vineyards. The other most important river, which starts up in Asturias, right up here, is called the River Ebro. It goes through the Cantabria Mountains, becomes the Rio Cantabria, goes all the way down to Penedès and Barcelona. So these two are rivers of great importance, certainly in winemaking terms. I'm boring you, aren't I? Okay, right, so let's start with this one. These wines are going to be dark. Beasts. Okay, one there. Another here. This one is actually listed, the second one is listed as Criantha, which means it will have a year of oak aging in it. It's a declaration there is some wood. I'd be surprised if the other one doesn't have it. Oh! Okay, so Ligaris first. Amazing colour, deep black blue purple. Very ripe. Wonderful smells. There's a smell of kind of like a warm, dusty barn. There's almost a smell of saffron in there, and baked plums. I'm starting to taste a little bit of oxygenation. Bit of oxidized, some aldehydes, and maybe that particular sample isn't in the condition it should be in. But that wine starts off nice, but then it gets more and more baked and a bit flat. This one actually has an even fresher colour, so that's much more like it. Shame, Ligaris can go get to fuck, I'm afraid. It's not in any good condition. Wow. Immense power. It's kind of a wine where you put it in your mouth and you almost think it's too hard, too rich to swallow. It's like if I pour myself that much whiskey and tried to drink it, I'd be like... But it has such balance. And every time I turn it over my mouth and go... more air comes through, another flavour pops up, a violet, or a blackcurrant, or a blackberry, or a tayberry, and you get this kind of bounce of different flavours. Very, very complex. Quite stunning. Certainly on this showing, it's Dominio Fournier all the way, but I think that this bottle, as is likely to happen when we're pouring little samples for people to try around the world, and these, who knows how long these samples have been in the bottles, I think that one I'm afraid is a bit out of nick. Bring us on to the last two wines. So the last two wines here are royalty. They're from the same company. There are one or two producers which kind of transcend the region of La Rioja. Remind you again where it is. There we are. This is the Spanish border here, the French-Spanish border. If you go due west along the Pyrenees to the Cantabrian hills, which are here, you get to Rioja and Navarra. A favourite place of Ernest Hemingway. Chuck that in there. And we have these two wines. These wines are from the otherworldly producer Marquez De Murrieta. Certainly when I started buying wine from them, which was when I was a supermarket buyer at Waitrose some 20 years ago, they were still bottling their wines barrel by barrel. So you could buy one case and it'd be absolutely amazing, and the next case would be very, very different because it came from a different barrel. Not necessarily any less amazing, just different. Now I think they're much more sophisticated in their approach, but at the same time they keep a lot of their tradition intact. And they make a wine which is very famous. I should have maybe printed off a label so you can see it, called Castillo Higuet. Castillo Higuet for me is the best red wine in Spain. I mean, there are people who disagree with me. They'll go, what about Bega Sicilia, Unico? Well, yes, I've drunk a couple of great Bega Sicilias. 68 and 53 stand to mind. Incredible years, incredible wines. But on current form, remember, these wines have been brilliant for years. Many, many years ago, I drank a 1964 Castillo Higuet on a holiday, and it must have been 30 years old when I drank it, and it was still a baby. It was beautiful and purple, had freshness. I couldn't really understand, my mind couldn't really compute how wine could taste so fresh and be 30 years old. I mean, that's kind of the purvey and the reserve of things like 1986 Mouton Rothschild, which is a bottle of wine that costs one, if not 2,000 quid a bottle or something. Those wines are really extraordinary. But it just shows you that Rioja, pound for pound, is incredible value for money when you stack it up against quality Bordeaux's these days. Anyway, what I'm going to pour in this bottle, in this glass, is Marquez De Murrieta Gran Reserva, which means it spent 2 years in wood at least and 3 years in bottle at least. 2014, so that's 7. So this is 2 years longer than that. And this is a wine of great standing. 50 quid, by the way, which sounds like an awful lot of money, but it's not, because it's the best, one of the best red wines in the entire country. The Castillo guy is probably double that. It's probably 100 quid. Now, they also make this, which is another super premium wine. It's what they call an icon wine. And somebody said to me, I don't mind icon wines, and as long as icon is one word, not two. You see what I mean? And this wine has just been absolutely munching all of the competitions it's gone into. So we've got a 2014 traditionally styled Murrieta, which has spent a lot of time in wood, had time to breathe and air and assimilate a lot of the alcohol. And if done properly, and 2014 is a fantastic vintage, so it should be done properly, especially if it's this producer. But also the otherworldly 2016 vintage has made a wine here. It doesn't say whether it's a wine which has been aged in new oak or old oak. The label implies that it's a new kind of... I don't know what, a new variant of what Marquez De Murrieta does. Castillo guy, super old-fashioned, aged in these old barrels for 10, 15 years sometimes. But they've got this kind of crust of tartaric acid, which stops them from actually oxidising. This wine, it just says here, Castilla Guy Gran Reserva Especial 2010, which is the one I told you, which is their top wine, was awarded Best Wine of the Year by Wine Spectator, which is the American kind of Bible. 2005, Castilla Guy was the first wine that I tasted blind, which I actually scored as 100 out of 100 in my life. So if the 2010 is as good at or better, then I'm afraid I have to agree with him. But that's why I'm so excited about trying these two wines. So without further ado, 50 quid for the Gran Reserva, the Dalmau 16, 48 quid. So a couple of pounds change. Okay. Gran Reserva, oh man. Oh, dude. Wow, look at the colour on that. Holy crap. Okay, right. That smell just immediately sort of triggered so many memories in one go of places I've been when I've tasted this particular wine. It's funny, you know. Not everyone can do it. I understand that. But I think some people get the feeling of this, that this is what the primordial ability of the nasal, the olfactory sense can do. But when I smell that wine, I've drunk Castilla Guy in many different places, or Marquez De Murrieta in many different places. And that DNA immediately unlocked doors to lunches I've been to, evenings I've been to, competitions I've tasted at. Extraordinary. Vivid. It's almost minty in its herbal delivery. There's this wonderful smell of very expensive cedary oak, which kind of bleeds into the fruit, which is deep, dark currants, like black currants and blueberry. You can't tell where the oak starts and the fruit stops, which is the definition to me of great Gran Reserva wine. It's about as much about the oak and the frame and the airing and the maturity as it is about the fruit. And this is doing it to perfection. Quite emotional wine. This is why I do this. Bit of a geek. Incredible wine. Needs a roast leg of lamb or roast beef. I'm not fussy. Sorry. Yeah. One of the best wines I've tasted in 12 months. If not the best. Wow. Okay, if you've got 50 quid to spend and you want to buy someone a real treat, find them that. If you want to spend about 25 quid and get something which is probably giving you the same amount of pleasure, but for me this is such a rarity, then buy the Marquez De Murrieta Reserva, which is incredible. And if the Reserva 16's out there, it's absolutely stunning. So there you go. That's what you should be spending your money on if you really want to know what the fuss is all about. This is apex predator. You can spend £1,000 on a bottle of wine. It will not taste better than this. It'll just be rarer than this. There you go. Marquez De Murrieta and Castilla Guy, by all accounts, 2010 or 2005. Take your pick. That's as much money as you will ever have to spend if you want to know how good wine gets. And if you don't like that wine, then maybe wine's not for you. Maybe wine isn't the thing that motivates you. Maybe there's flavours in wine that you like and there's flavours you don't. But you will see in Technicolor why these wines cost what they do. Okay, so this wine is a very, very different beast. Of course, the vineyards are the same. This is La Rioja Alta. This is the Bethlehem. This is the Golden Dome of Tempranillo across the world. Deep, deep, deep brambly smells. Beautiful fruit. Oh, oh wow. Okay. What am I going to say next? I don't know. It seems a shame to buy one and not the other, but these are two versions of the same song. There's a song by Cat Stevens called Father and Son. It's not time to make a change. It's all about a difference in generations, right? This is old-fashioned Rioja at its absolute finest. And this is what happens when you add a bit of technology, maybe some new oak, and you analyse things to the nth degree. But this one has velvet purity, Much more like a premium Bordeaux. This tastes like Haut-Brion. It's incredible. There you go. Enough said. So, a swan dive of Wines of Spain 2021 in 12 wines. Next time, I'm going to show you some amazing wines from the Douro Valley in Portugal. See you next time.